Are you tired of spending your time and money chasing strategy after strategy only to discover what worked 10, 5, or even 2 years ago is not working now? Things shift fast in the online space, and if you're not keeping up, you're getting left behind. It's time for something different. Welcome to the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, where every single episode will be jam-packed with proven, profitable strategies, behind-the-scenes secrets, and what's working now resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. And now, your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist, and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast. I'm your host, Patty Farmer, and I'm looking forward to sharing today's industry expert with you. And I have to tell you, the expert that we are having on today is somebody I've pretty much known online for at least a dozen years. And I have watched her from afar, and I have always been extremely impressed on how she shows up, what she teaches, and more importantly, how she leads with that. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So Susan Young is an award-winning visibility strategist and founder of Get in Front Communications, Inc. For 20 years, Susan has been using online coaching and workshops to teach entrepreneurs how to self-promote with confidence, have a crystal clear introduction, and be seen as a credible leader who makes an impact. As a matter of fact, her coaching and programs are described as the real deal and incredibly powerful. A former radio news reporter and on-air anchor, Susan has interviewed everyone from homeless people to presidents. She also worked as deputy director of New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman's Office of Radio and Television and was a PR director for a nonprofit. She's been honored as Entrepreneur of the Year, but Susan's favorite achievement is being named one of the top 75 badass women on Twitter. And I love that. I really, really do. So thank you so much, Susan, for being here with me today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Yes, I love it. So I have to say, let's just dig right in, because I think what we're going to talk about today is a topic that everyone really, really wants to know about, right? Because we're going to be talking today about how to speak, sell, and storytell in sound bites. And I think that is important today, no matter what you're doing, and we're going to dive into that. But first, tell me a little bit about you, how you got to where you are, and kind of tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. You know, life is a story. So here I go. All right. I broke into the news business actually when I was 12 years old on my Stingray bicycle in Edison, New Jersey, where I had a newspaper route. So I used to deliver the news to people's doorsteps, afternoon newspaper route. And when I went to college when I was 17, I was pretty convinced I was going to write for Rolling Stone magazine. And when I found the campus radio station, I was just totally blown away and smitten. So I changed my mind a little bit and wound up spending some time at the college radio station. And when I graduated, I went back to New Jersey where I came from and went home. And for 10 years, I worked as an on-air radio news director, an on-air anchor, and a news reporter, interviewing, like you said, everyone from homeless people to presidents, won a bunch of awards along the way, and really just developed that curiosity for storytelling and telling other people's stories. And it's been fascinating to me, even now as we watch social media, that I've been doing this all these years, just called it something different. I also ran Governor Whitman's Office of Radio and TV. She's one of the first people that I met because she was in the same area I was, covering the news in Somerville, New Jersey. That's where she's from. And I worked as a PR director for the Arc of New Jersey. And then I got a little bit bored with all that managing chaos, as we called it. So I decided to open up my company 20 years ago, actually, this year. So hashtag 20 in 20. And, you know, with all the things that are going on in the world these days, things have changed. We started out as a PR company, media relations, because I was a reporter. I understood what was newsworthy and how to pitch stories and frame them. And now, of course, it's morphed since about 2006 with social media and online classes and training, but really just doing what I love is teaching entrepreneurs, coaches, and speakers and business executives how to simplify their message and to speak in sound bites, because the only way to get someone's attention is, it takes 8.5 seconds. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We've got to be clear, succinct, and simple. We have to be interested, and we have to be interesting.
Oh, I really love that, because I think that is so true. Most of the time people do one or the other. They really don't understand how important it is to do both. And I really love how you were just so succinct and interesting in how you told us your story.
Thank you.
And I think that I saw someone say that you actually have some type of a program called Story Magnet. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Story Magnets is my online signature class, and we're starting it up again in the fall. We do it several times a year. And what we do is we talk about, I call it personal development wrapped up in storytelling. So the 30,000 foot view of Story Magnets is that first we have to get out of our own heads and get our story straight. We're constantly listening to that internal chatter of I'm not good enough, of imposter syndrome, of I can't do this. And so once we get that straight in our minds, that narrative, and I'm trained in NLP, in neuro-linguistic programming. So it's a lot about communication, psychology, and experiential mindset. So once we get past that, then we go into Story Magnets of the 30-second introduction, or elevator pitch, as many of us call it. How to introduce yourself with an impact to get people's attention and keep their attention. And then we go into the longer version, which I just shared with you, the template of, I started in the news business when I was 12 years old, how to have an interesting story and the highlights reel of your life. And then we wrap it up with a nice box and a bow on top, Patty, because it's all about being able to deliver it, whether you're in person or online. This could be it's about vocal vitality. It's about body language and charisma, whether you're doing video or at a chamber of commerce or a networking meeting, that we all need to be engaging and charismatic. And many people are empaths, or they feel shy, reserved. They feel, worried about that they're not going to be enough. So we pull all that together, the storytelling from the inside out. And in Story Magnets, we walk away with a dynamite elevator speech, a wonderful story, and a wonderful mindset so that people are ready to stand and deliver.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's so important. And I know for myself that when I'm out networking, I came from the networking world, and it's pretty much how I built my business. I have found that people really don't get that talking in sound bites and being interesting. And depending upon what type of questions you ask, like I know that for me, I teach my clients this as well, to never ask the what do you do question. I think that it is literally a trigger for people to just go into sales. I really prefer to ask who do you serve rather than what do you do. I think it takes the focus where it needs to be. But I do have to say, being able to talk in sound bites when you're networking, speaking, are really, really important. And I understand that it really is when you are pitching the media as well. But what about social media? I think that right now, talking in sound bites in social media, sometimes it's okay to do longer posts, and it actually is preferable in certain situations, but you still have to be succinct and really control that narrative and really stay on message. So what can you tell us about that?
That's a great question, Patty, because when we talk about, people will ask me all the time, how long should my written blog post be? And I tell them, as long as it needs to be, as long as you say what you need to say, convey your message articulate and convey your message, and get in and get out. So if you can say it in 300 words, then that's the perfect length. If it takes 423 words, fine. If it takes 1,015 words, that's fine too. As long as there's no, what I call jargon, adjectives, and rhetoric. The stuffy things that just don't add. Word count doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it is. It just, as goofy as it sounds, make every word count. So when you think about content in social media, even if it's a video, it's the headline, and that's the soundbite that you're looking for. What is going to get someone's attention? Because in social media, the only thing that's guaranteed to be read is the headline. And in that split second, if the viewer or the reader doesn't feel intrigued by that, or you fail to pique their interest, they're going to click away and go on to something else, maybe your competitor. So it's the headline and those few words, the 8 words that may be in the subject line of an email pitch or on a blog post or a video or an Instagram. That's what we're looking for, just those simple 8 words, 9 words that are going to grab someone's attention and keep their attention. That's the key. It's easy to grab someone's attention, but we need to keep their attention.
I so agree with that. I even think it's true, like when you email, right? It's great that you got them to opt into something, but now they have to stay, right? So you have to be able to nurture and give them a reason to stay. But I have to tell you, Susan, I really think that I have noticed it in my magazine. So when people write for my magazine, I will tell them every single time, just so you know, we have 15 articles in the magazine every time, but only 7 or 8 make it to the cover, the title. And how we choose the titles for the cover are which are the most sexy, juicy, and compelling titles that are going to compel people to open up the magazine, right? I can't even tell you, sometimes I will read the greatest articles. They are so good, and then their title will be like 3 lines long. And I'm like, it seems like it is really hard for people to really be succinct. And I like to say, please have your title be no more than 8 words. And so I have seen it over and over, which I have to tell you has made me better, I think, right? Because I don't know, maybe I did that too, maybe not to that extent, but I will say that I think that I notice it so much more now, and I notice it everywhere. And I have to say, one of the things I noticed, speaking of noticing, I noticed this thing on your website, this blog post you wrote about the business card tip of writing on the back of the business card. And I thought that was a pretty good technique, right? Really talking about sound bites. So can you share it with the audience?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because that's in my notes too. It's so easy to just go on like the Energizer Bunny, on and on and on. And so when you have a great idea or you want to explain something that might be a little complex, you need to distill it into 8 words or 10 words or one or 2 quick sentences. Write down the idea on the back of your business card. And if it doesn't fit, rip it up and throw it out, because it has to be clear in your mind first before you can try to explain it to anybody. So if it's too convoluted and too long and it doesn't fit on the back of the card, that means you need to start wordsmithing, as I call it, and editing, revising, and go back to it and get rid of the empty words, get rid of the jargon, adjectives, and rhetoric. Make sure that you are focused, as Patty had alluded to before, on the person that is on the receiving end. It's not about you, but it's about them. Because in the end, it's all about BS. And that to me is about be the solution. You want to
Oh, I like that.
Turn the lens away from you and what you need, or you need to close 5 deals this month, or you need to get hired to speak here or do this, or the car broke down and all of that drama. But take the focus off of yourself and know your audience. Who are you speaking to and what do they need from you? And how can you be of service?
So when we're talking about sound bites and being more concise, so I can see how we've just talked about how important it is in networking, right? But how important is it like when you're pitching? Because I know right now, because we're all not doing in-person events and we're spending a lot more time in virtual meetings, virtual networking, pitching to podcasts. Can you share with us some tips and some really good solutions here that might help people on how can they pitch correctly and do it in sound bites but still be effective?
Well, I've got a whole course on that. But to sum it up nicely for our listeners today is that the only way to get their attention is the subject line, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. So when you are looking at, busy podcasters who get bombarded with pitches, most of them are irrelevant or, not framed right or not written correctly. And especially with traditional media, print, radio, and TV, where I come from, is that there are just hundreds and hundreds of pitches which are irrelevant. And you know how you feel when you get junk mail in the mailbox or just spam and things that you didn't ask for. Things are, totally irrelevant, that you get frustrated and you get angry. And so we want to be able to use that subject line as just the entree into the conversation. You don't want to tell them everything that you have about this interview or your pitch, you just want to wet their whistle and pique their interest. And the way to do it is that subject line. So what works for me and what I teach in my class is that you mention something to the podcaster or the reporter that you're pitching, something that they've written or done or had on their show in the past, like in the past maybe 4 or 5 posts that they've shared. So if, for instance, I was pitching myself to a podcaster and I listened to her podcast and I saw that she had done an interview with somebody that talked about a specific formula. And so I mentioned it, and I mentioned this gentleman's name, her guest's name, in the subject line. Loved your interview with Dr. William, whatever his name was. And then I wrote hyphen, pitch for you. So she knows exactly what one, that I'm paying attention, I'm sharp, I'm on the ball. I'm flattering her just a little bit because I'm telling her I listened and consumed her information. She liked that. And I'm also telling her, read on, I've got a pitch. And then I went into I'd say about 8 or 10 sentences at the most. Just introduced myself, loved your interview, and I pulled out a quick nugget from this Dr. William person's interview that showed her right out of the gate that I understood and enjoyed this soundbite that he shared, this one piece of his formula. So she knew that I knew what I was talking about. It wasn't just like, great post, love this, but it showed that it was meaningful. And then I went into my pitch and gave her my cell number. I'm available. This is what I want to talk about. Are you interested? Casual, professional, but knowledgeable. And she wrote back to me exactly in those words, with a pitch like that, how could I resist? Here's my calendar link. Let's set it up.
Oh, that's good. That is really good to know. I hope everybody's writing that down because I think that is really, really important. And I think it's how you cut through the clutter, right? So you cut through the clutter, you make it memorable, right? Get your attention. You did it in sound bites, so it was very short, but you got to the point. I think that for me, when people are pitching me, I don't mind if people pitch me, but at least pitch me and tell me what the pitch is without me having to read a whole page, right? Get to the point. And I think that's important so I can make a decision. And not only that, but sometimes they literally got my attention in the first couple lines and then they keep going, right? You're like, okay, like I got it, right? And so I think it is really important for people to really pay attention to that, right? So let's kind of flip that a little bit. So why do sound bites matter when you're talking about sales, right? Because that's what we all want to really talk about is sales. So now we have sales, we have story, and we have sound bites. So how do you put them all together so that it works?
Again, it really comes down to the writing and your ability to convey and articulate your message in a way that's going to be meaningful to your listener and not self-serving and obnoxious. So we're looking for clarity. We're looking for using the right emotional words and tapping into what their needs are, keeping it short and sweet, pithy, interesting, weaving in a little bit about your personality, and having them simply ask for, all you want to hear is 3 magic words. Tell me more. Tell me more. So if you're doing a presentation, maybe you're the guest speaker at a luncheon meeting, or you are a guest on a podcast or on a Facebook Live, or you're in a meeting and you explain your highlights reel or you do your introduction, and you just simply want to pique their interest and get them intrigued and curious and interesting, because curiosity moves conversations forward. So when you make people curious, all they're going to say is, tell me more. Can I have your card? What's your website address? Maybe we can meet for coffee. Would you like to be a guest on my show? So that's what we're looking for. Again, it's the Energizer Bunny. We don't need to keep going and going and going, but we need to come up for air. And as powerful as our words are, especially in sales, and we tap into the emotions of everything, Patty, I've got to tell you, the most important, powerful part of our communication is silence. And when people try to fill that space by talking and talking with words and they get tangled up in their own words, that's where the trouble starts. That's when problems unfold and the sales aren't made, because people are uncomfortable with silence. They feel like they have to fill it and it feels awkward. But when you can ask for the sale and then stop, like this, what I'm doing here, silence is very, very powerful. And that's an important part of the sales conversation.
Well, that's an even better soundbite, right? You're being quiet. Because I think that one of the things that when I'm talking to people, right, and I'm listening, I want to listen between the lines. That's my favorite phrase. I listen between the lines. And so you really need to be able to talk in sound bites to be able to do it. Now, I have to tell you, as a speaker, I've been a speaker for 9 years. And I remember in the beginning, looking back, when I first became a speaker, I'm an educator by nature. And everybody would say that, right? And I couldn't figure out why everybody would tell me how great my talk was. Right? I mean, I would hear it over and over and over how brilliant I was. But what I noticed is when I did Q&A, nobody ever had a question. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, why do they think it's so great, but nobody ever asks me a question? And it's when I really understood that you really want to over deliver, not overwhelm. And I think that I was just giving them so much information. It was like so overwhelming. They didn't need to ask a question, never mind buy what I was selling, right? So I have to tell you, I had to learn that really fast by hiring a speaking coach who started listening to some of my speeches and said, Patty, you are a phenomenal speaker. You just say too much. I was like, well, that's the story of my life. But I had to really learn that. But then I got it. Like once I got it, I got it. But I think that a lot of people do it. And now when I hear speakers, I hear it a lot when other speakers do it too, and I recognize it. So in talking about speaking, how do you stay on message and use sound bites when you're a speaker?
Well, it's important to, and I've been, speaking for 20 years in addition to the radio, but it's easy to speak on the radio when nobody's looking back at you. There's no live human beings with eyeballs staring at you in a room or on a video, versus you're just sitting in the news booth with a microphone. But it's very different when you're in front of live human beings who are giving you instant feedback. It's important to be memorable, and we want to grab their attention right out of in the opening, right out of the gate, so that they will be interested and understanding how adults learn and the interactive part and the engagement and the storytelling, weaving NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, some of the practices and techniques in there about when it's appropriate to tell a story, when it's appropriate to have those sound bites, and then when it's appropriate to go deeper and to explain things and to tie in the technology and the PowerPoint, knowing that you are the message. Nobody came there to see your slides. I mean, let's face it. Nobody cares about that. They want you to be a great speaker, and they want to have a great experience with you. So how are you going to do it? I just be I'm myself. East Coast, a little bit, raw and real, but that's what people appreciate. And the ability to sum it up. I grew up in a house where, extended family with conversations where everybody talked really fast and really loud. So it was the one-liners that really stood out. Whoever could, spit out a quick one-liner that was funny, and then we'd go on to the next thing. And I watched this from my parents, my grandparents, my cousins and aunts and uncles from when I was a child. And people now say to me when I speak, how did you get to be so funny? I'm like, I grew up like this, and we never thought it was funny. It's just the way we communicated. So you had to have those sound bites. I didn't call them sound bites back then when I was 7 years old, but I understood what it took to be able to think fast and on your feet and be able to sum something up and really distill something important just to get that nugget, that pithy little soundbite that people are going to remember, similar to a bumper sticker or a refrigerator magnet. That's what we're looking for when we look at those quotes. Like my grandma used to say, and she was born in 1899 in Brooklyn, and she lived to be 95 years old. Uneducated, but I'll tell you, Patty, she was the smartest person in the family. She used to say, know when to speak up and know when to shut up.
Is that so true? I have to tell you, when I was growing up, there were 5 kids, and that was a big thing in our family, and they actually called me Chatty Patty. And I have no idea why, but I also have been called all my life that I was the queen of one-liners, and that was how I was funny too. But when I became a speaker, I thought, well, I'm really funny, with one-liners in my personal life, and I struggled to try to transition that into business. I was able to, but not until I really started doing radio and speaking and podcasts, that's when it really became easier for me, learning the process of really knowing how to do it. And now I think it's pretty effective for me, and I just do it without even thinking. But I do have to say, it really is important to be able to do it. So something that I did when I was younger so effortlessly, right? It's getting better now, but I do think it is really, really important. So what are 3 phrases that help you stay on message?
Okay, so these phrases can only be followed up. This is my unspoken rule here. Okay, they can only be followed up by one sentence. Okay, that's what always the challenge and kind of the fun of this exercise is. So the 3 phrases, when somebody says to you, tell me about your program, and you've got like a whole binder of information and websites and blah, blah, blah about your program, start your sentence, your response with one of these phrases, and then follow it up with one simple sentence. You can say, our purpose is, the goal is, or the bottom line is. And then you follow it up. So if you say, what's the purpose of your, what's your project all about? And you say, well, we're building playgrounds for children in urban areas so that they can get more exercise at school. The bottom line is that kids in cities don't get a lot of exercise, so we're providing playgrounds to 10 elementary schools. Stop. That's it. So you have to distill all of that information. Here's another quick example. I had a 6-page case study on a client of mine who raved about how wonderful I gave her the confidence to find her voice and to communicate and do videos, and how she totally this was a catalyst for her career and her personal and professional development. So 6 pages from a case study. I distilled it down to 1 paragraph. What's the key that Ardith, my coaching client, was sharing about her experience in working with me? Then, because I wanted to have a soundbite for my website, in addition to the longer video, because people consume information differently, then I pulled out I took a highlighter like the Cliff Notes, what's the most important line in this paragraph coming from this 6-page case study, and I got it down to 1 sentence. Susan gave me the confidence and the voice to step into my own company and communicate effectively. Her program spoke to me in a way I had never heard before. That's it. So from 6 pages to 1 paragraph to 1 sentence. So when you start,
that's really good. That's really good.
When you start your sentences with, again, the 3 ways to do it is, our purpose is, the goal is, the bottom line is. Because the bottom line is basically 1 sentence. Here's the deal. We're building playgrounds for elementary school kids because they need more exercise.
Perfect. I mean, it's very, very clear.
Yep.
Susan, you've given us some really, really great information. I hope everybody took notes. If they didn't, just so they know, we'll have all this in the show notes so that they can come back and see it. But so that they can connect with you, what is the best way for my audience to connect with you?
They can take a look at the website at sueyoungmedia.com, and they can send me an email, sue@sueyoungmedia.com. We also have our Facebook group called Communication Nation, where we talk about communicating with confidence and clarity.
Perfect. And you came bearing gifts too. I love it when people come bearing gifts. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your gift?
Yep, we've got the 30/30 guide, which is, we talked about content earlier, and it's about how you can forget about writer's block. There's no such thing as writer's block. I give you the formula for creating 30 topics in any niche in just 30 minutes. So that's what the 30/30 guide is all about.
And we will have the link to that in the show notes as well. And I love it because I'm sure these 30 topics in 30 minutes are all going to be nice and in sound bites so that we can get it down really, really good. So I love that. And Susan, now we're at the portion of the show that I like to call #OpenMic. It's my version of social karaoke, where I pass the mic over to our guest and I ask you to share your #1 marketing, media, and money strategy. That's the name of the show. So what is that strategy that you would like to share with my audience, that actionable strategy?
You can attract more clients, build your business, and be an epic listener.
Oh, that is so good and so true, because I think it really is important. I love how today we really talked about story. I think you have really given us some really good information about how important story is, but how important story is by doing it in sound bites and how that will generate sales. So I think that has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Susan.
Thank you, Patty. It was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And to the audience, to my tribe, and to my network, thank you for joining us on the Marketing, Media, Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Make sure to check out our sister publication, Marketing, Media, and Money magazine, and you can get a free lifetime subscription right now at marketingmediamoney.com. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all have a phenomenal day. Remember, if your day isn't phenomenal, you have the power to change it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at www.marketingmediamoney.com. I promise your business will thank you.